Doctors inform patients of their dementia only about 45% of the time, meaning that less than half of all people with dementia are actually given their diagnosis. The other half often spend the remaining years of their lives scared and worried, marginalized and depressed, or isolated and angry. But life with dementia doesn't need to be that way. Life can be good again, even with dementia. I'm Mary Radnofsky. I have a rare kind of dementia called subcortical leukoencephalopathy. I've had it for 12 years. And in that time, I figured out how my dementia affects me on a day-to-day basis. So I've started developing strategies to live a more fulfilling life than I did in the frustrating and confusing years leading up to that diagnosis. Like everyone, I still have bad days. But I've rediscovered a way to be part of something that's greater than myself again, as I once did in my old life. But I needed a diagnosis first. Back then, I was a college professor. I taught English and French, astronomy. I taught interdisciplinary curriculum design. I lived in Hawaii, New York, in France. I lived in many places, and I traveled a lot. I had a middle-class life with friends. I had health insurance, and I had cable TV. More than a dozen years ago, though, I started fainting mysteriously. I'd be standing around when it seemed like black paint was dripping in front of my eyes. I'd fall unconscious for a moment, and as I'd wake up, I'd hit the ground because I was already falling. These were mini strokes. I lost my hearing in one ear. A doctor ordered MRIs. A radiologist suspected I had multiple sclerosis. The neurologist dismissed that and said that the white patches on my brain scans were signs of normal aging. I was 47. They were all wrong. I moved to Hawaii, started over, got several jobs, but often had misunderstandings with friends and colleagues. After 6 years there, I had to stop teaching. I couldn't keep details straight. I was forgetting names and faces, misinterpreting ideas, and remembering things differently from everybody else. And for the first time in my life, I lost my patience with my students. One day, I told them to turn in a project, but the entire class looked at me and said, "You never assigned it." They were right. I knew that something was terribly wrong with me. I couldn't keep track of time or money, and I didn't know who to trust. I lost a lot of all of it. I moved back to Washington, D.C. to look for answers. I found a neurologist who ordered the right tests and assured me that even though I do indeed have an incurable form of a degenerative brain disease, there's still a lot of ruin left in my brain. That's an old Polish saying, he said. It means I still have a lot of life left in me, and I wasn't going to die anytime soon. So if I wanted to keep living, I could. I just didn't know how, at least not at first. I had no job, I had no health insurance, and I had no Social Security disability income for 3 years. So while the government tried to figure out what to do with my diagnosis of a very rare dementia, I went down a number of different paths, very often depressed, very often discouraged. I'd never heard of other people with this condition, and though I eventually found one organization, they mostly dealt with children who died of it quite young. So I wanted to find a group of adults who were living well with it. There had to be someone, because I still was fairly well living. Finally, an old college friend of mine sent me a book by Christine Bryden, a woman who had been diagnosed 20 years earlier with dementia and was still advocating on the rights of people with dementia. So I looked into this, and I found there's another generation and a whole new community of people who have dementia and are living well with it. So I decided I would also become an advocate for the rights of people with dementia. Now I feel like I have a life worth living again. I've spoken at the United Nations. I travel and speak at conferences on behalf of human rights because I want everyone to know, doctors, caregivers, you, especially you, if you have dementia, I want you to know that you still have a capacity that you may not even realize you have. And you have rights. And you have the right to continue enjoying life. You're still human. Once human, forever human. So live. Thank you.